As the Trump White House and the Republican-controlled Congress look forward to an ambitious agenda for September, tensions between the president and congressional leaders are spilling out in an unusual public display. John Yang starts us off.
Leader McConnell, leader of the U.S. Senate.
At a breakfast with Kentucky farmers this morning, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was upbeat.
This new administration in Washington and this Congress is interested in getting America growing again.
But he was taking friendly fire from President Trump, who slammed McConnell's and House Speaker Paul Ryan's strategy for raising the nation's debt ceiling. Could have been so easy, now a mess. And Mr. Trump hit McConnell on a major irritant, the Senate failure to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. That should never have happened. That late-night Senate vote appears to have triggered the intra-party feud.
Repeal and replace of Obamacare should have taken place, and it should have been on my desk virtually the first week that I was there or the first day that I was there. I've been hearing about it for 7 years.
Our new president had, of course, not been in this line of work before, and I think had excessive expectations about how quickly things happen.
The New York Times reported the president's public criticism of McConnell escalated to the point that Mr. Trump berated him in a phone call that quickly devolved into a profane shouting match. Today, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders tried to play down the friction.
I think the relationships are fine. Certainly there are going to be some policy differences, but there are also a lot of shared goals, and that's what we're focused on.
Meeting with Boeing workers in Everett, Washington, Ryan also emphasized common ground with the president. But he seemed to have trouble answering a question about their relationship.
And are you confident that you can influence the president?
It's a day-by-day deal. I'm kind of joking. First, you control your own actions, and you lead by example.
With big fiscal deadlines looming and the White House and Congress still hoping for their first major legislative win, Mr. Trump said McConnell could still get in his good graces.
If he gets these bills passed, I'll be very happy with it, and I'll be the first to admit it.
But passing those bills could be complicated by the public sniping. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm John Yang.
We explore that infighting in the GOP now with two people who know Congress well. Michael Steele, he was press secretary for former House Speaker John Boehner. He's now a political consultant. And Brian McGuire. He served as chief of staff for Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell from 2014 to May of this year. He is now a lobbyist. And welcome to both of you. We appreciate your coming. Michael Steele, how serious do you think this split is between the president and Republican leaders in Congress?
Well, I think you have to look at it differently than almost anything we've seen in American history. President Trump is unique. He is the first American president who never served in elected office or in high military office. And so we shouldn't expect his relations with congressional leaders to be the norm. That having been said, these attacks, this tension, is stupid. It is counterproductive. It doesn't help get big things done for the American people. And so at this point, I know congressional leaders are continuing to work, do the hard work on things like tax reform and infrastructure to get those things done. The president right now simply isn't helping.
Brian McGuire, how serious, how real is this split, do you think?
I think that Michael's right, that it is counterproductive and self-defeating. But I think that it's also not ultimately going to define these relationships. I think both Republicans in the House and Senate and in the White House, including the president, have a lot of shared goals, and that they're going to come together ultimately to achieve them.
How serious do you think the president is about these criticisms? Do you think he's doing this because he believes, because he's angry about what hasn't happened, or is there something else going on here?
It's hard to say why he tweets what he tweets. Nobody knows but him. But I do think ultimately that he is a constructive partner on the issues that he and congressional Republicans agree on. And I expect when everybody gets back into town that they're all going to be locking arms and trying to focus. I thought it was encouraging at the end of the day today that the White House issued a statement saying that they were going to be focused next week on tax reform pretty exclusively and pretty vigorously. So I expect that that's what they're going to do, and I think that that's a good sign.
Michael Steele, you're both saying that this is counterproductive, but is it justified? I mean, is the president right to criticize Leader McConnell, to criticize the Speaker and other Republicans?
There are always tensions between a president and congressional leaders, even if they're of the same political party. I think that people in the House and the White House are frustrated that the Senate was unable to complete the repeal and replace of Obamacare. At the same time, we need to be focused on the future, not the past. Leaders have to be focused on what comes next. And what needs to come next is actual accomplishments like tax reform, like infrastructure, and let's not forget, raising the debt limit and keeping the government open.
But my question is, and I'll turn to you, Brian, for this. I mean, is the president, I mean, is he justified in criticizing Leader McConnell, who you worked for a long time?
I understand that the president is anxious to get his agenda through, but Republicans in Congress are no less anxious to get it through. There are a lot of arguments as to why things have passed and have not passed, but I think the important thing, as Michael said, is to continue to look forward and to focus on the things that they can do together. And clearly tax reform is one of those things. It's something that not only unites Republicans in Washington, it's something that the public supports overwhelmingly, and it's something, frankly, that Democrats could potentially support. So that's something that I think the president should focus on, and it would be very constructive for him to do so.
Do Republicans in Congress, Michael Steele, have something to fear from this president? I mean, we've seen him. He went after Dean Heller, the senator from Nevada. He's been very critical of Jeff Flake and of John McCain.
Well, I think that, one, it would be much more helpful if the president were to train his fire on Senate Democrats, the people who, for example, the 10 or so Senate Democrats who have to be elected in states that he won in 2016. To the extent that he's attacking Republicans, there isn't a lot of indication that it's going to be terribly effective. His endorsements haven't worked out very well in the past, and particularly in the Senate. The House is a different creature because every member of the House Republican Conference will face both a primary and a general election opponent next year. Senators, with their longer terms and greater public profiles in their state, are relatively immune to that kind of attack.
What do you mean? I mean, how do you see that?
Yeah, the Senate, the terms are 6 years, so an attack now doesn't quite have the staying power that it would for somebody who's always in cycle. Senators who won last year, for instance, aren't too worried about hits that they might be taking right now because they've got a long runway between now and their next reelection.
But politically, for example, Jeff Flake is up in Arizona next year. Do the president's constant criticisms of him, after he, in fairness, has been candidly critical at times? He votes with the president, but he's been critical of the president at times. Does it hurt Jeff Flake for the president?
I think that the only thing that truly hurts both the president and Senator Flake is being unable to point to something that they've achieved legislatively, which is why I think the president would be much well advised to start focusing on the legislative agenda rather than on which members he may not like at any given day.
Michael Steele, how well do you think this president understands the legislative process, and does it really matter whether the president does or not?
I think that the president and the people around him, the president has people around him who have an intimate understanding of the legislative process. The vice president was a House member, very experienced, very talented. We don't need the president to engage on a granular level in these policy disagreements, but we need him to use the bully pulpit to make the case for important policy priorities. Look at what Speaker Ryan is doing over the month of August. He's having events all across the country talking about the benefits of tax reform for middle-class families, higher wages, more jobs. President Trump is promising to get involved in that fight starting next week. But let's remember, leading up to the vote on health care in the Senate, his primary focus seemed to be denigrating his own attorney general. That doesn't help get results.
How do you, at this point, I know both of you still talk to folks you know very, very well on the Hill. Is it their sense that the president's going to continue as he is now, or is it just every day is a jump ball?
I think it's everybody's expectation that when everybody gets back into town at the end of the month, that there will be a lot of common cause and that people will work on the important things that they have to focus on. And staffs have been working on those things all throughout the summer.
How much of this, and in connection with that, we talked about whether the president can hurt a senator or a House member politically. How much of this helps the president politically in that he can be seen as running against a Congress that he can argue isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing?
It's hard to see how this could help the president, frankly. The only thing that, again, I think the president has to fear is nothing to show for his time in office. And the people that he needs to help him enact his agenda are, in some cases, the very people he's attacking. So I think it would be much better for him and for Republicans in Congress if they focused on their common agenda. And I think that that's what they're going to do when everybody gets back into town.
Just a quick comment. Any way you see the president benefits from this?
No, of course not. It does nothing but further inflame the 25 to 35% of the country that is with him already. It doesn't help with moderates. It doesn't help with Democrats. It doesn't help with many Republicans. It's not a helpful strategy. I hope he'll knock it off. At the same time, I think congressional leaders are intent on getting things done, whether or not he does.
Michael Steele, Brian McGuire, we thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be with you.